Hello, everyone. I am Myra Rhoden, the band director at Fayette County High School, which is in a suburb of Atlanta. And I am also the founder of the Athena Music and Leadership Camp, which is an all-girls band and orchestra camp that we have each summer. I am extremely excited to present to you today from the band hall to the Zoom call, motivation during distance learning in the large ensemble. This is one of my favorite quotes. Begin with the end in mind means to begin each day, task, or project with a clear vision of your desired direction and destination, and then continue by flexing your proactive muscles to make things happen. This really sums up things that we do every single day for ourselves and for our students. If we choose to focus on what we have and what we can do, then our vision can become clearer and we can be proactive instead of reactive to whatever comes our way, whether it's dealing with our administration, dealing with our students, or dealing with the pandemic. First things first, you always have to remember your why. Remember that your passion, which is music, teaching band, and others' needs, the others in this case would be your students, would be your purpose. So you have to remember that you have to combine your passion with their needs, not with your needs, but combine your passion with their needs, and then you can determine your purpose. So what do I mean by why? Well, it is the reason why something is done or is created. It's your cause. So you have to remember, why did you choose music education as a career, as opposed to math education or music performance or pre-medicine or anything else? There's a reason why you chose music education. So you have to remember that as you move forward in this pandemic. And most importantly, why are students still choosing to be in your class? Why are they choosing to take your class, whether it's virtual, whether it's hybrid, or totally in person right now? You have to remember that it is a choice for them. So why are they choosing that? There's so many options for students to choose from right now, but they choose to be in your band. So find out why, and then keep doing those things. Why is your why important? Because people are drawn to those who believe what they believe. So if you know what your why is, and you communicate your why to your administrators, to your students, to your parents, to your staff, then you have a better chance of people being on your side. It also helps you with your choices. And we're going to talk a lot about your choices during this pandemic. We'll talk a little bit more about that soon. So now that you've remembered your why, you have to know your what. So during virtual teaching, it's important to understand that it may take longer for students to grasp a concept, because the connection that you have every day when they're in person is just not there anymore. And it's going to be totally different. And that's okay. Different is okay. It's just different. So it's important that you know what skills you want to teach. So as you're considering your what, it's important not to let your how distract you. There'll be so many different things that you can say, well, I can't do that because. Don't listen to yourself. Figure out what you want your students to know. Figure out what skills they need and figure out how to teach it later. If your students have their instruments at home, consider the private lessons approach to teaching your classes. Students can still learn to play while at home. Is it ideal? No, but it is possible. So focus on the basic theory that they need, the specific skills for each instrument. Know what you want the students to know by the end of the semester. What do you want them to know by the midterm? What do you want them to know by the end of the first grading period? It's also essential for you to have expectations for the students. What are they? Have you told your students what the expectations are? Do you have expectations for yourself? Do you have a schedule? Do you stick to that schedule? Does your schedule include time for yourself? And does your schedule include time for your family? That's important. And then something else you have to know is what we as music educators can and cannot do during this pandemic. And you also have to realize that your administrators may or may not know as well. So don't assume that they have looked at all the research. Don't assume that they have done all that. You are the person in charge. You are the professional in music education, or one of the professionals in music education at your school. So make sure you know the research. Make sure you know what you can do. And it's okay to let your administrators, your board members, and people who make those decisions make sure they know what that is too. So speak up. Just know what matters to you can and will matter to your students, your parents, and to your community. So now that you've remembered why you decided to teach and the skills you want your students to have, now it's time to figure out the how. Remember, just because you may be 100% virtual or hybrid, or like me, where half of my program is 100% virtual and the other half is in the building 2 days a week, but that only happened for the first 9 weeks for us. Now it's all 5 days a week. It even changed in the middle of the semester. The whys and the whats still remain the same, but the how certainly changed, even in a matter of days. So it's very important that you create your predictable routine. Something that would work in a hybrid setting, something that would work in a virtual setting, and something that would work in person. Something that works for us is that we've chosen to have 4 folders available for students all year or all week in our learning management system. We happen to use Schoology, but there are many out there. So we have weekly folders that include a red, yellow, and green folder, and then a purple folder after they've done the red, yellow, and green. The red folder always includes instructional materials, whether it's videos, whether it's us teaching, videos that we found, reading material that they need to look through. The yellow folder has things for students to practice. So it could be something from breezing through theory, or from lines for them rhythm charts, or from their band book, or whatever it is that we want them to practice that week. And then the green folder is where they show us what they've done to progress over the week. So those are the items that they have to turn in. Do they have to turn in things from the red and yellow folder? No. But it's best for them to do the things in the red and the yellow folders first, so the green folder can be really, really easy for them. And then we have that extra folder, which is the purple one for those who want to go above and beyond. So that's worked for us. The students know that you have a weekly folder with these folders in it every single week. They know what days of the week things are turned in, and they know exactly what to expect on Monday morning from us. So make sure you determine what your routine is and your routine for your students. But even though you have a routine, it's also important to understand to be flexible, considering the times that we're in right now. Things are constantly changing, whether it's in students' households, in their communities, whether their other classes are being consistent or not, and with what you can and cannot do according to what your school district says. So it's important that you don't show that you're upset or stressed in front of your students. Easier said than done. I totally understand. But don't get upset in front of your students. They have to see that you know how to deal with different situations in a professional way. And guess what? They will do it too. They're going to mirror your reactions. So always remember that. So if they know how to be flexible, if you know how to be flexible, they will know how to be flexible. Something to kind of help with that is to always have multiple plans ready. A plan A, plan B, plan C. If something changed next week with your school, or if your kids are able to come to school or not, what are you going to do? How are you going to be flexible with that? What we mentioned, that what we're doing at our school works whether the kids are there or not. They're always going to have their work, and sometimes we're going to listen to the things in the green folder in person. Sometimes we're going to ask them to record it for us. At the end of the day, they're all doing the same work, and they know that we can be flexible with our work anytime we do it. Also, you have to remember to have fun. Isn't that the whole reason why the kids and why you're there? Maybe not the whole reason, but that's one reason why kids stay. So you have to remember that fun is a factor that you cannot forget. You have to remember to add a little fun to it as well. So as Margaret Thatcher said, plan your work for today and every day. Then always work your plan. One thing that will definitely help is if your students are self-sufficient. So what do we mean by that? Well, we need to make sure, especially those who are virtual, that the kids understand exactly what you need them to do and how to do it, and if what they're turning in for you is good work or not. So with virtual learning, it's important that the students possess some skills related to being self-sufficient. They should not have to depend on you for every little thing. They should not have to email you for every little problem. Isn't that one of our goals anyway? For our students to learn to become independent, to be able to read music, to be able to understand music, and to be able to play music without us spoon feeding every single thing to them. So how do we do that? Well, first thing is we need to promote growth mindset. So letting the students know that it is okay for them to fail. They're not going to get this particular line perfect the very first time. And that's okay. It's okay to fail. Failure is not permanent. It's about getting better. It's not about quitting. It's about getting better. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Am I better at the end of the month than I was at the beginning of the month? And once the students understand that things will not immediately happen for them, even though it may immediately happen for someone else, that doesn't mean they're a failure. It just means that they're on a different timetable, and different timetables are fine. So they have to have that growth mindset. That's really important, especially for the students who are at home, because it will be so easy for them to get frustrated and to quit what they're working on because there's not anyone there to make them do it again. There's not anyone there to say, that was great, or you need to work on this. Let's do it again to make it better. They're going to have to do that themselves for the most part. They may have to be the one to encourage themselves. So it's very important to promote that growth mindset with your kids. They also need to develop some listening skills. So how do you do that in a virtual setting? Well, it's okay to include some listening assignments for the kids to do. It doesn't necessarily always have to be classical music. Maybe let the kids have choice. Maybe have the students submit to you what their favorite musicians are or favorite songs are. You will probably see that you have a lot of different musical types in your band program. So let's take a piece of music and listen for the melody and listen how the harmonies work and listen to what the bass line sounds like. And do you hear those dynamics? And what did they do here? Or what about the style of the music? And what about other different musical concepts? Can you hear, even in pop music, that the kids can relate to the music that they're doing in class? So include those assignments where they have to analyze what they hear. And remember, it doesn't always have to be something that you choose. Also, don't assume that students will listen to what you think they're going to listen to. You will be surprised once you ask them what they're interested in, what they will tell you. It's also important to demonstrate how to use technology for good. Even in our hybrid classes and our in-person classes, that word technology is always something that's like, oh my gosh, I don't want the kids to have phones. I don't want the kids to do this and do that. I am a proponent of teaching the kids the proper way to use technology. So if your school says you cannot have your phones in class, then they can't have their phones in class. There's no way around that. But if you are allowed to let them use a tuner or let them use a metronome, show them when they get home that they have fingering charts right there in the palm of their hands, that there are apps out there that will help them with music theory that are gamified. So, as the students like to play games, why not music theory games? There are a lot of them out there that are free. So it's okay for technology to not be a bad word. Just teach them how to use it for good in your class. It's also important for students to know how to assess themselves. One thing that works for us is to encourage students to record themselves and then listen to themselves. It is hard for students to listen to themselves. It's hard for adults to listen to themselves. But encourage the students to do that and not only hear what they're playing, but to look at the music and follow along and see if what they hear is what they see. And if not, then they need to figure out where those mistakes are. Teach them how to go measure by measure. Teach them how to use a metronome. And teach them how to listen to their own recordings and figure out what they need to do better. Did you hear crescendos and decrescendos? Did you do the ritardando that's written in the page? Did you see it? Did you react to it? And is it in your music? That goes back to developing listening skills as well. So they also need to know how to assess themselves. But they also need to know how to assess others and using constructive criticism. So if you're able to play on the Zoom call and you have great internet, which is a must, and students are able to play for you one by one, it's okay for the other students to give them feedback. But you also have to remember that you have to teach them how to give the feedback. One thing that works for us is teaching students how to use praise correct praise. So they tell something good, and then they tell what needs to be corrected, and they finish with something good. So it could be, you really, really stayed in time. I didn't really hear a lot of the crescendos, but your timing was great. Just work on the crescendos. I think it will be even better. So teach them how to do that. You also have to teach the kids how to accept constructive criticism from their peers. They will hear constructive criticism from us all the time, and you have to teach them how to accept constructive criticism from their peers. That is not going to be something that all students automatically will know how to do and that all students will automatically be comfortable doing. So, assessing themselves and assessing others. We do have a lot of teachers nowadays using Flipgrid to turn in assignments. That is a great way to not have to depend on internet speed for students to assess others. You can set it to where the students can offer comments, or you can set it to where they don't. But that might be a great way of teaching kids how to assess themselves and how to assess others. You also need to encourage grit with a reminder that failure is not permanent. You have to tell your kids, don't give up. The word yet is a very powerful word. I don't have this scale yet. I don't have this scale exercise yet. I can't play it at 100 beats a minute yet, but I can play it at 80, so I'll be able to get to 100 in a couple of weeks. Encourage grit and not giving up. That is so important, and that's a life skill that we can definitely teach in our music classes. So the question was, are your students self-sufficient? My next question is, if not, what are you going to do about it? We can complain. We can talk with other teachers. We can do all of that. We can post on social media. But the real question is, if your students aren't self-sufficient, if they are not able to handle these things at home by themselves, then what are you going to do to help your students get across those hurdles and to promote that growth mindset? Let's change a little bit and talk about assignments. So we all have to give assignments, whether it's in person or whether it's online. So you have to be sure that what you are assessing is what you really want to assess. Isolate your concepts. Remember, students are going to learn things a little bit slower virtually than in person, and that's okay. So if you want to make sure that they are rhythmically there, or whether you want to make sure they understand note recognition or fingerings, it's all a part of reading music and putting it together. But if someone is struggling, consider making your assignments to where you isolate those concepts so you can see where the struggle occurs. They may be able to nail rhythms if they're playing the rhythm on one note. But then as soon as you put notes to it and as soon as they have to move around, then all of a sudden the rhythm just goes out of the door. So it's probably not a rhythm issue. That's probably a note recognition issue, or it could be a fingering issue. They see the note, they're not sure the name of the note, and they're not sure how to finger it, so it messes up their rhythm along the way. So during these virtual times, it's great to really isolate those concepts to help you determine where your kids are struggling and what you can do to help make it better. Also, let's go back to what I said about having a predictable schedule with your assignments. Not only does that help your students, but it also helps you. If you ask any of the students in your class right now, could they explain what your assignment schedule is? I was always told that if you can explain something, then you truly understand it. So, is your schedule for your assignments something that your students would be able to explain? I also ask, is your grading schedule predictable? Do your students know that probably on Monday mornings you're going to grade and they're going to see these updated grades in their roll book or on their grade report? Is it that predictable? It's okay to be predictable, and students really like that structure. So consider having a predictable schedule for your assignments as well. Something else you also have to remember is to pace yourself. Remember, you're going to have to grade everything that you assign, okay? I personally made the mistake of assigning too much in the first couple of weeks, and I was constantly in front of the computers, listening, grading. And then I realized I'm doing it to myself. So you have to pace yourself. It goes back to that very first question. What are you really assessing? So what do you want the kids to know that week? Figure out how you're going to assess them, and then make sure the assignment that you give really does that. And then you can probably cut back on the things that the students have to turn in, and that will free up some of your time as well. So you have to make sure you're very, very specific about what you want to assess and not make it stressful, because it can be stressful if you let it. Grading can be stressful if you let it. If you think about this, it's just like the students with missing assignments. Looking at a grade book full of assignments that you have to grade can be just as overwhelming for you as it is for those students who have to look at their grade reports and they see all those missing assignments. So don't let it become stressful for you. Take a break, stretch, hug your pet, water your plants, have a quick snack, make a cup of coffee, go for a ride, but make sure that doesn't happen, or do your best to not make it happen. So continuing on with assignments, you have to realize that your students also have whys. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of talk nowadays about whether or not students should be made to turn on their cameras. And there are different philosophies surrounding that when it comes to attendance and participation and kids paying attention and different things like that. And school districts throughout the country have different rules about that. So of course you have to do what your school district says. But we all know it's hard to teach students how to play an instrument if we can't see them. So perhaps think about this in different ways and perhaps approach your students with turning on their cameras in a different way. So if you have apprehensive students, sometimes you may realize it may be a self-concept issue. Maybe the student just doesn't like the way they look on camera, so they're going to assume the others aren't going to like the way they look as well. What are you going to do to help them with their self-concept? And then their surroundings may be an issue as well. Who knows? They may be taking care of their baby brother or sister, or they may not be very proud of where they are. You know, you can do different things like encourage them to have a wall behind them. And that way we're not seeing into their rooms or seeing into their homes. Maybe offer some little tidbits of advice like that. And who knows, one day those kids who don't like turning on their cameras might do that. Also be encouraging. Let the students know that turning on the camera really isn't for them, but it's for their friends. We've all been in quarantine. We want to see other people, especially the kids want to see their friends. So encourage them to turn on their camera so their friends can see them, just like they want to see their friends as well. Sometimes that works. Or maybe consider this meeting with the student one-on-one. I'd love to help you, but I can't see you right now. Perhaps you can stay a few minutes after class, and then you can turn on your camera so I can see what you're doing that may be affecting your sound. Just offer different ways, because you never know why that student may not want to turn on his or her camera. There may be problems with students submitted recorded assignments. It could be a comfort level with how they sound on camera. They could be doing the assignments, but they just don't ever turn it in because they're not proud of what they sound like. And so you have to make sure that they have that growth mindset. You may not know, you may not be proud of what you sound like right now, but that's what I'm here for. I am here to help you. So I can't help you if I don't know what you sound like. So encourage them to turn in their recordings. And you know, some students, it still goes back to the self-concept. They're not sure about how they look on camera. So they'll take a still photo and they'll upload it to TikTok, or, well, I guess still photos aren't on TikTok, but they'll upload it to Instagram. And for some reason, social media is one thing, but they don't want to give it to you. So you just have to talk to the students and see what's going on. You also may have some students who just can't seem to get it together with your work. It could be time management skills. I've talked to students before and they'll say, well, I don't do anything on weekends, on Saturday and Sunday because it's my weekend. And then I don't do anything on Mondays because I'm trying to get all my work done on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then I'm in the building for school Thursday and Friday. And so, you know, I looked at the student and said, so you're telling me out of 7 days, you only do your work for 2 days. But I'm looking at your grades right now in all of your classes. How's that working out for you? And that student actually looked at me and said, I guess I need to change my schedule, don't I? Yes, you do. So help your kids with their time management skills. Help them make a schedule. Sometimes they just don't know and they just need that help. Knowing how to complete a task is also paramount. So make sure your instructions are very, very clear, and make sure your kids can repeat the instructions back to you. And if they cannot, then that means there's something going on with how to complete the task. They may understand what to play, but they may not understand how you want the assignment returned. So always check to be sure that the students understand how to complete something that you would like for them to complete for you. You also may have students who have additional responsibilities at home. I had a student to tell me that it was his responsibility to take care of his little brother in elementary school, and I teach high school, but to take care of his little brother and make sure his little brother gets his work during the school day and logs on to class. And then after he finishes his school day, he gets a chance to work on his. So you never know what responsibilities kids have at home. And that can be a reason why a student is not turning in work. Maybe they're just running out of time, and that goes back to the time management skills. Sometimes students simply aren't comfortable with asking questions either. So sometimes you have to ask leading questions to be sure students understand how to complete the task, what you want them to do, and how to achieve it. So there's a question down there at the bottom. Have you asked your students? Will they communicate with you? And if they won't communicate with you, why is that? Have we established our positive relationships with our students? So our students, excuse me, so our students will feel comfortable communicating with us when they have an issue. We have to make sure, especially when they're not with you every day, that it's okay for them. They need to know that it's okay to reach out, whether it's via email or asking for a Zoom meeting or whatever it is. Your relationship, your positive relationship with them really, really matters, and having them get through all the whys that are listed on this particular slide. So it can be overwhelming for us as well. So what can we do to kind of get some things off of our plate? If you have student leaders, and we all have student leaders, regardless of what level we teach, use them to help you get some things off of your plate. Listen to their ideas. I had a teacher that once said, "Don't assume you're always the smartest person in the room." And I used to wonder why that teacher would say that. You're the teacher and they're the students. Of course you're going to be the smartest person in the room. But what he meant was kids have great ideas. And it's okay to ask what their ideas are and to listen and even help you solve problems with their creativity. Sometimes you just need to ask and see what they have to say. You never know. Be mindful of their complaints. If your student leaders are strong enough to tell you something, that probably means something is going on in the band program that you don't know about. So you make sure you listen, assess the situation, and then respond accordingly. Sometimes you may not need to respond at all. Delegate your small tasks to them. What can your leaders do that will help you get some of those things off your plate? They can send words of inspiration once a week, reminder messages. What else can they do? I had a student this year. We were able to go outside and play, and her responsibility was to remind the students to stay hydrated all the time in the heat. Every single day. She raised her hand. "I just want to remind you to stay hydrated." And every time she said it, students took a sip of water. That was her job. It was small, but she did it, and she did it well. Let your student leaders help you motivate others to get their work done. Let your student leaders help you motivate other students to get their work done. That speaks for itself. Also, they can create team building activities online. Maybe next week you can say, "All right, student leaders, you'll have 15 minutes in a breakout room with your section. Come up with a team building activity that you can do online, and you all can collaborate and come up with the same team building activity, or you can do all different ones." All right, so what does that do? It gets the student leaders something to do to collaborate about, and then they are in charge. So you're actually teaching them leadership skills, even though you're not there with them. You'd be surprised at how those little motivational things that your student leaders can come up with will help even team building online. Even if you're in person, socially distant team building activities would be great as well. We did it just last week in sections, and students actually ended up playing red light, green light, something from elementary school. But they had the best time, and it was socially distant, and they were able to have a little fun. All student led. So give your leaders a chance to shine. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So, learning from home can be difficult. We all know that. But it's definitely achievable. Remote learning helps us reinforce lifelong skills such as time and energy management, independence, and creative thinking. This is for our students, but it is also for us. Think about those lifelong skills: time and energy management, making your assignments, grading your assignments, and making sure you're not stressed out doing it. Independence, making sure that your students understand that failure is not an option, and if they don't get something the first time, that's okay. And creative thinking, creatively figuring out how to navigate what we're going through right now and to be successful. So we have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and that we are taking care of our students. So I'd like to end with my favorite quote. Start where you are. Use what you have. And do what you can. Remember, it's not about worrying. It's not about complaining. It's not about thinking about what you cannot do. It's about remembering your why, remembering why you're here to begin with. It's about determining your what. What do you want your students to achieve? And then figuring out your how. How are you going to get things done? Remember, virtual is just the tool. What you're teaching and why you're teaching hasn't changed. So I would like to thank the California Music Educators Association Bay Area for allowing me to share these ideas with you virtually. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your school year. Bye-bye.